All right, everybody. Welcome to the January 11th, 2017 edition of the vBrownBag. This week, we have Emad Younis presenting about kind of the second part in our vSphere 6.5 series. Going to talk about the vCenter Server Appliance. Emad, if you would advance the slide, please. There we go. Just a couple quick housekeeping items that we do every week. You can see all of the Twitter handles that we cover between vBrownBag here in the States, and then Latin America, and then across the pond in EMEA. And then you can also see the schedule. I think over in EMEA, they're doing a VCAP. VCAP 6 series right now, so be sure to check that out. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Emad, and he can introduce himself and get this moving.
All right, thanks, Adam. All right, as Adam said, we're going to be kind of covering the second side to the vCenter Server Appliance 6.5. Adam had talked about a bunch of the new features last week, and I'm going to cover some more this week. Just a quick introduction. My name is Emad Younis. I'm a senior technical marketing engineer here at VMware. You can find me at Twitter at Emad_Younis. I blog at EmadYounis.com. My role here is I cover the vCenter Server Appliance and vCenter Server Migrations, so how to get from a Windows vCenter Server to the appliance. So one of the questions we get typically is, why should I migrate, right? I mean, if you're looking at this, you're like, hey, Windows supports the same number of hosts, appliance supports the same number of hosts, etc. So what really is the compelling reason for me to migrate? We're going to cover those as we go along. First, we have operational benefits of going to the appliance. If you've ever deployed an appliance as well as a Windows vCenter server, I'm sure the first one resonates, quick provisioning. The vCenter Server Appliance, I mean, you just deploy OVA, put in the FQDN, the host, things like that, the target host, and boom, you're up and running. Windows, you actually have to install an operating system. You actually have to install the database. You actually have to install the application, which is vCenter. The appliance is all pre-ready for you with everything. Once it's deployed, it's ready to go. The appliance requires no operating system or database licensing. So from a cost perspective, you are getting your money back there. Windows, again, requires an operating system license, a database license, whether it's SQL or Oracle. When it comes to the appliance, we use vPostgres as the database. And really, that database is tuned for the vCenter Server application. So there's no tuning required out of the box. You actually don't even need a DBA. It's meant to just deploy and go. Whereas with Windows, again, I need SQL, I need Oracle, I need a DBA or some sort of individual with those specialties. There may not be a DBA in your group. You may just have another admin who just kind of takes on that role. But nevertheless, you need somebody who can tweak it and tune it and back it up and things like that, which is, again, not a requirement for the appliance. Unified patching. With Windows, you actually have to patch the operating system. You have to patch the database. You have to patch vCenter. And in some organizations, that may actually be different teams. So getting all that done may be a big effort when it comes to change control and timelines. With the appliance, it's just right within the VMI. You go in, you do the patching, and we'll patch, the Photon OS now for the appliance in 6.5. We'll patch vCenter, we'll patch the database. Everything is done all at once. And last but not least, with the appliance, you have a single point of support. We own the stack now when it comes to the operating system, Photon OS. we have vPostgres, and we have the vCenter server application. So if anything happens, you just contact VMware support, and they will take care of your case. In regards to Windows, you would have to either contact VMware for the application, you would have to contact Microsoft for the operating system and or database in the case of SQL, or Oracle if you've gone that route. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefits to going to the appliance. From a feature perspective, there's even more benefits in 6.5. Adam last week talked about native high availability, so VCHA. That's only for the appliance. VUM is now also part of the appliance, so it's equal to its Windows counterpart. We now have out-of-the-box management within the VAMI, as Adam showed last week, so we can provide the utilization when it comes to memory, network, CPU. We also give you visibility into the vPostgres database. So we can now manage the appliance, more visibility, and it's only going to get better. Native file-based backup and restore is only for the appliance and new in 6.5. You'll be able to back up your VCSA to a target that supports FTP, FTPS, HTTP, or HTTPS, or SCP. In case of a disaster, you'll just mount the original ISO that you used to deploy the VCSA, and you'll go through the restore option. And last but not least, we actually give you a path to go from a Windows vCenter server 5.5 or 6.0 to the appliance. Again, just to kind of drive the emphasis home, all these features are specifically for the appliance and not on Windows. Let's jump in and talk about migration. So typically, when we wanted to go from a Windows vCenter to an appliance, we decided to do it the manual way. We'd spin up a new appliance alongside our Windows vCenter, and we would start to move. If we had VDS, we'd move everything to VSS, and then once everything is moved, then we would swing the hosts over. And that just took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and since it's manual, it's error prone, right? We're humans, we make mistakes. So it can take a large effort, but at the same time, it gave us some control getting there. Next, we had scripted. While scripted was or is a better option than a manual approach, you also had to have somebody within your organization that could do this. Otherwise, it was a learning curve. And then you would also have to learn, while this is doable, things like if you had, DRS rules, you'd have to kind of figure out a way to get those in place during the process. So while better than manual, will take some effort in regards to making sure that you get everything right, and error messages, and at the same time making sure that you had somebody in-house that could do this. We also have the Fling. If you guys remember the Fling, which was out there, was the first attempt at a migration. It had a subset of features to get it out there pretty quick and get customer feedback, which it did. But now, because of the feedback, we actually have 2 end-to-end migration tools that will get you from a Windows vCenter server to an appliance. The first one we released was right after VMworld US, which is vSphere 6.0 update U2M. The next one we have is vSphere 6.5, which is a built-in migration tool as well. We'll cover U2M really quick. So U2M supports migrating from a Windows vCenter server 5.5 to 6.0 U2. It supports migrations for embedded and external deployments. We do not allow you to change your deployment topology during the migration. So for example, if you have your SSO component and your vCenter component all on one VM, you'll come across that's embedded, or I guess in 5.5 that was simple. So from simple, you'll go to embedded. If you are custom, where you have your components on different VMs, you'll come across as external. But again, we will not allow you to change topologies. One thing I want to note is in vCenter 5.5, if you have islands of SSO domains, this is your time to consolidate. Because once you migrate that first box, you are now locked into that version. So if you have, 3 islands of vSphere.local and you just want one vSphere.local, then I highly recommend consolidating first and then migrating. Otherwise, you're locked in. There's no way to do it once in 6.0 or 6.5. The other thing the migration tool takes care of is we assume the identity of the source Windows vCenter. And this is huge. Again, in manual types of migrations, we deployed a new vCenter, meant a new name, new IP, new UUID, etc. Here, we retain that information. So FQDN, IP address, UUID, certificates, MRFID, OS name, etc. That's all brought over. So any solution that uses vCenter as an endpoint, as far as it's concerned, it's the same old vCenter server. The other good thing is we do not touch the source Windows vCenter server. No changes are made, nothing. Once we extract, we copy the data. That's actually the proper word. It's copy the data over. We shut down the Windows vCenter server to avoid any IP or name conflict. But it's there. In case you run into any issues, we have a really easy rollback plan. You'll just shut down the appliance, delete it from inventory, power on the Windows vCenter server, and then you'll rejoin it back to the domain. And the reason being is part of the migration, we have to update the Active Directory object with the appliance information password. So in case you have to revert back, you just need to rejoin your Windows vCenter to the domain and you're back and running. So you have a quick rollback plan right there. We support any database that's supported in vCenter Server 5.5. So SQL Express, Oracle, all supported. We also run a migration assistant, which goes out and does pre-checks prior to starting the migration process. And last but not least, we provide an option to bring over your historical and performance data. In 6.0 U2M, it's just simple as checking a box. Now, one question that comes up a lot is this tool is great, but one thing I want to do is I want a clean, fresh migration. It doesn't seem like the migration tool will do that. Actually, the migration tool will do that. What you need to do is not select bringing over your performance and historical data. If you think about it, it's doing it for you just like a manual migration would. We're deploying a fresh appliance for you with the tool. You're going to do that manually anyway. You have to do all the heavy lifting to swing your configuration and your inventory over. The migration tool does all the heavy lifting for you. By the way, as part of the configuration and inventory, we do bring over your distributed switches if you're using them. So there's nothing extra that needs to be done there. And since we do that as part of a manual migration too, since you're starting fresh, there's no historical and performance data. Here, just uncheck the box, don't check it, whatever. And you also have a fresh migrated vCenter server as well. Going on to the migration tool in 6.5, one of the key differences is we support a Windows vCenter Server 5.5 or 6.0 to 6.5. So if you're on a Windows vCenter server that's 6.0, this is your path to get to the appliance. Also, what's great about this release is since since VUM is part of the appliance, we will migrate that from whether it's embedded or external into the appliance as well. So no longer needing a separate box for VUM, which is a key differentiator between using the migration tool in 6.0 versus 6.5. I'm sorry. Is that you or me, Adam?
I think that's you.
Sorry. I have no clue what's... I guess it went away. Sorry about that. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, just your deck. Nope, we lost it.
Did you? Back.
Presenter view.
Oh.
We're seeing all the secret stuff.
There's no secret stuff. It's all in my head.
Yeah, it's disappointing. There we go.
Yeah, I know.
Proceed.
There's no notes. Anyway, sorry about that. Again, we support migrations for embedded and external. Same caveats. If you're embedded, you'll come over as embedded. If you're external, you'll come over as external. If you are embedded and you want to externalize, and there's not the caveat of consolidating domains or anything like that, or if you do need to consolidate domains, do those first, then migrate, and then you can actually repoint. You can repoint from an embedded to an external deployment once you get there. Again, we're preserving the identity of vCenter, so we're keeping UID, IP, all that stuff. And in this version, we actually support any database that's supported in Windows vCenter Server 5.5 or 6.0 will be migrated to a vPostgres embedded database in 6.5. Migration Assistant again runs first. Here we actually have in this release more granular options. By default, both migration tools will bring over your configuration and inventory data, but here we provide you a little bit more granularity in which performance data you want to bring over. How are we doing on questions?
We're clear so far. We've had a couple ones come in that I've addressed, but you might want to talk about VUM just real quick and what some of the implications of that are.
Sure. So with VUM, if VUM is embedded, when you run the migration process, it's just going to come over. If VUM is an external box, what you're going to wind up having to do is you'll have to, if this is a migration process, you'll have to run the migration assistant on VUM as well, so that way it will be migrated as part of the migration process. If you're already on the appliance, let's say you're on 6.0, and VUM again is running Windows, what you're going to have to do is you'll have to run the migration assistant only on that Windows VUM box, and as part of the upgrade, it will realize, oh, there's an external VUM, and it will bring it over as part of the upgrade to an appliance in 6.5. But again, keep in mind, all this is only for 6.5. And underlined are the key differentiators between using U2M or using 6.5, which are pretty significant. So one thing I just want to kind of, again, touch base on, because we get this question a lot is the topology. So here we have a external deployment that has a single sign-on 5.5 running on its own virtual machine, and then we have a vCenter server running on its own virtual machine. So this is a custom deployment. So this is what we have before we migrate. Now, once we do the migration in 6.5, again, as you can see, we go from external to external. And the same thing for embedded. We do not change topologies. So to emphasize again, if you by chance are embedded and you have a reason to go external, meaning you want enhanced link mode in your environment, then by all means migrate the embedded deployment, which is a lot easier, and then deploy a new platform services controller, and then use CM SSO util to repoint and then do a reconfigure. So that way, once you repoint from the embedded SSO to the external PSC, or I'm sorry, the embedded PSC to the external PSC, then it will reconfigure that vCenter server and remove that embedded PSC, becoming a standalone vCenter server, and everything is cleaned up after the fact. Another key piece is keep in mind, while we are doing a migration, we are migrating the data from a Windows vCenter server to an appliance. This is also an upgrade. We're going from version 5.5 or 6.0 to 6.5. So the standard upgrade rules apply. First, make sure that all the products, whether they're VMware or third-party products, have interoperability with the version you're going to. So make sure that everything is compatible with 6.5. And then the first thing you're going to do in case of an external is you'll start with migrating all your platforms, your SSO first to Platform Services Controller in 5.5, or in 6.0 you'll migrate all your Platform Services Controller to appliance-based. Once those are done, all within your vSphere domain, then you'll go back and do your vCenter servers. But those are the rules. I can't stress enough that, again, while it's a migration, we are also doing an upgrade. So make sure that you have a plan of attack in place. So a few tips and tricks that I just want to cover and make sure that you guys are aware of. Again, make sure that you check the compatibility matrix as you would in any kind of upgrade. Not only from a VMware perspective, but also if you're using any kind of backup solution or anything, storage solution that has some sort of plugin that uses vCenter as an endpoint. Make sure that you've checked the vendor site as well to make sure that it supports 6.5. Also, know your topology. I know when I was a customer, especially when a new version would come out, I inherited an environment. This is your time to kind of plan out, put your stamp on it, but at the same time, fix anything that was broken. So make sure that you have a pretty good idea of what's going on in your environment. The migration assistant will actually, when it goes through, it will show you what kind of deployment model you have, whether you're embedded or external. So that could also help you there. Also, make sure you understand what's installed on your Windows vCenter server, because we do shut down once we've copied the data over. So the last thing you want to do is forget something on there, and it's like, oh, well, I need to power it on, but now I have all my users using the appliance. So just a little tidbit is make sure that you have some sort of local account that you can put on there. If that does happen and you need to log back in. But you also want to disable the NICs on that. So just right click, edit the VM, and uncheck the box for connectivity on the NIC. So that way, if somebody does accidentally power it on, it won't cause any disruption. But it also gives you the ability to log in after the fact and collect whatever you need to collect in that manner. But again, hopefully you've done that ahead of time. Display name retention. So part of the migration is we do keep the operating system name, but we do provide an option to have a new display name or inventory name as part of the migration process. If for some reason you want to keep the same Windows vCenter display name, you have two ways of doing this. The first way is to go into your current Windows vCenter display name, right click and do a rename, maybe put like -old or something there. And then as you're starting the migration process, you can use the same display name. Or you can go through, give it a new display name, and then once you're done with the migration, do the same thing. Basically go back to your old one, rename it, and then now you can rename your new one. Either one works, but it's a way to at least keep your display name. But as far as the OS name, there's no way to change it. It's tied to the FQDN. Validate DNS forward and reverse lookup. The appliance does checks, and we've actually seen a lot of customers have some issues because they didn't have, let's say, reverse lookup or something in place. So make sure you have forward and reverse lookups in place. NTP is another sometimes issue, so make sure that time sync and all that is working correctly within your environment. Make sure that all the plugins you have are working prior. In the case of course, VMware plugins, we will migrate these over with no issues as far as the registration, even third-party plugins. But with third-party plugins, you may have to re-register. Also, again, with this stuff, you will have to make sure that whatever version you're going to, which is 6.5, is compatible with those plugins. If you are, we do support using DHCP. The only caveat there is make sure that you do a reservation for the FQDN as part of that. Link mode, again, this is not only a migration but an upgrade. So one of the things you want to make sure you do so you don't run into any kind of licensing issues or whatnot during the migration is you need to break link mode, and then you can start the migration process. Database rollup jobs and purging. As part of the migration, if you have like a large inventory, or if you've one of those folks who've been upgrading over the years from version 2x, 3x, 4x, etc., that database has seen some days. We want to make sure that in order for you to have a quicker migration process, I recommend maybe making sure that the rollup job has been running. If it hasn't, definitely make sure you run that. And if there's some data in there that you no longer need, you can purge, but highly recommend having somebody with DBA skills there. Last thing you want to do is completely wipe your VC database. Last but not least, you are going from a Windows vCenter to an appliance. Even though we support image level backups, you may have some sort of backup solution running in an agent or something like that, and that goes to number 3, knowing what's installed on your Windows vCenter. So now you'll have to go from that backup solution to a solution that supports VADP image level only backups. You cannot install, we do not support the installation of agents on the appliance. How are we doing on questions?
We're clear right now.
Hello, is this thing working? All right. So we've covered migration. I want to kind of, before I show the demo, I want to go into the native backup and restore. Today in 6.5, we support the backup and restoration of a vCenter server appliance or a PSC appliance. And that includes both external or embedded deployments. One thing I want to point out here is, especially with the PSC, let's say you have 4 in your environment within your SSO domain. It's multi-mastered. So if one fails, you don't need to restore from backup. You actually just can redeploy a new one and let its replication partners feed it its required information. Now, if all the PSCs within an SSO domain fail, then you would need to do a full restore and then deploy the others so that way they can start the replication process between them. This backup solution is hot, right? So you can do it at any time, in the middle of the day, whenever. You don't have to shut down the appliance to do it, so no QSing required. You do this directly from the VMware, just using the IP address or FQDN of vCenter server or the PSC if external. You'll just go to VMware, hit backup, and you'll go through the appliance backup wizard. For this release, we support HTTP, HTTPS, SDP, and FTP, FTPS. We're working on some things for the future release, but this is what we support today. By default, we back up your inventory and we back up your configuration, but we do not back up your historical and performance data by default. That's up to you. Now, keep in mind, if you do want to back up your historical and performance data, that will increase your backup time. Kind of the same with migration, right? If you select, I want to migrate my historical and performance data, you'll increase your migration time as well. We do offer an option to encrypt your backup files using AES 256. It's as simple as just checking a box. I want to encrypt this. You'll provide a password, and when you provide the password, keep in mind this password is not stored anywhere. I repeat, it is not stored anywhere. So if you lose said password, yeah, you can't restore that backup. That backup pretty much is worthless. So make sure that if you do use it, you keep that in a safe place.
Hey, Emad.
Yes, sir.
Question came in that I'll lob over to you. Where are the backups stored, and is this an embedded VDP just for vCenter?
So it's not VDP. This is a new backup and restore functionality native just only to the appliance. And as far as, you mean where the backup files stored?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the backup files yeah, so they go to whatever protocol you select. So if you decide that, hey, I want to store these on FTP, then you'll have a directory within that FTP server or HTTP server or SCP server, whatever, and you'll have a subset of files that are streamed to that location. Now, keep in mind, every time you do a backup, it's pretty much a full backup because we'll add files again and again. So you want to make sure that whatever directory structure you have there is the one that that's easy to follow. Another thing too. Good.
I was going to say one other comment that Dan made that I think it's important for the audience. NFS is not currently an option. Is that something that could be on the horizon for a future version?
So since we can't talk roadmap, uh, all I can say is other uh, targets are being looked at. So stay tuned for that one.
Cool. A few other questions if you want to take a minute to
Sure,
go
sure.
through. All right. Can a PSC on a multi-PSC SSO domain still be restored from backup? Or is it just easier to redeploy? I think you kind of addressed this earlier, but you may want to review that.
Yeah, sure. So again, if I have let's say 4 PSCs within my vSphere SSO domain, and one goes kaplooey, just redeploy a brand new PSC and let it receive its information from its replication partners, right? Because again, keep in mind the PSC is multi-master. If all 4 of those PSCs were to, bite the dust per se, then at that point you want to restore from backup the first one. You'll start deploying new ones after that and let them receive the information from their replication partners as well.
Okay. And then a kind of a follow-up on the VDP question earlier. VDP does dedupe, and just wonder, and do we do any kind of dedupe or compression or anything with this native backup solution?
Yeah, I mean we do compression across. So we do make sure that that's in place. Um, as far as dedupe, I think that's being looked into.
Okay.
Keep in mind this is still a 1.0 product.
How about backing up a vCenter snapshot? Is that a valid backup?
No, so we only for vCenter we only support image level backups across the board, and then for this, all this can do is just back up the vCenter, the files that make up vCenter.
Okay, cool. Dan also, last question that's in the queue right now, and then you can move on. Dan asks about the PSC backup, if it includes the VMCA configuration.
Yeah, so for the PSC, yeah, I mean we back up all the files that make up the PSC. So when you do a restore, everything will be there.
Cool. Keep moving on.
Yeah, I will say just FYI, there is no native scheduler for this release. One is in the works, so we do plan to have a native scheduler, but as far as today, there is no native scheduling. But since we do have REST APIs, you can write a script, whether it's using Power CLI or running a cron job, but you can automate the scheduling of this backup. Just some resources I kind of just want to point out before we go into the demo. We do have a VCSA poster out there in PDF, and it can be printed in poster size. So make sure you check that out. We are in the process of updating it to 6.5, so stay tuned. Same goes for the Platform Services Controller decision tree. That is also getting an update to 6.5, but this is a good way to kind of make your design decisions. Some other resources, of course, the vSphere blog. I blog on my own blog, so check that out. A lot of information we put into a FAQ, so please check that out. Answers a lot of the questions we have for migration. We also have William put together a kind of a one-page Git where you can go in and you have a bunch of information regarding blog posts, FAQ, KB articles, videos, things like that. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for all things migration. So make sure to check that out as well. We're just going through and releasing our product walkthroughs. So please go and take a look at those, provide us feedback. But we already have features out there, including the backup restore, VCHA, deployment, migration, things like that. Also, feel free to reach out on social media. We definitely follow the hashtag migrate to VCSA, or you can reach out to me directly at Emad_Younis. And of course, our lovely penguin friend. If you are one of those folks that want to use the image for stickers or some sort of apparel, I have a blog post out there on how to retrieve him and use him as well. So with that, I'm going to jump into a demo for migration. Unfortunately, it's not a live demo because my lab decided not to play nice. So let's do this. Can you see it?
Could see it, and now it's gone.
What happened? How about now?
Yep, looks good.
All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run the migration assistant on the Windows vCenter server. This actually deployment is an embedded deployment. So one thing you'll notice here is after I go through and run the migration assistant, it does some pre-checks. And it's going to go out and show me, first of all, it's going to give me any kind of warnings of anything within my environment. So in this case, it's talking to me about VUM and some files that may not be copied over. If you have SRM or things like that installed, it's going to come up and let you know, hey, if you have anything installed locally, it's going to say, hey, I noticed this is installed locally, but it will also give you any warnings to protect you from doing something and causing issues later on. It will also kind of give you a sense of what your source migration is and what you're going to. So in this case, it looks and says, hey, I see that you are running a Windows vCenter Server 6.0. It's embedded and the size is tiny. And I'm going to go through and basically have the same thing across. I'm going to go to an embedded 6.5, same size. You can migrate to the same size, or you can actually increase your size if you choose to. It's also going to go through and give me the migration steps. So if you notice there, 1 through 4, it's going to go through and provide those as well. Once this thing is ready and has waiting for migration to start, do not close it. I know it. I mean, it looks like a command prompt. You may have that itch to minimize it, but you may accidentally close it. If you close it at any point during the migration, you will have to start over. So make sure that you don't touch it whatsoever until once the migration is complete. And even then, you don't need to do anything because we are shutting down the Windows vCenter server. The migration assistant not only does the pre-checks, but it is the conduit that copies the data from the Windows vCenter server to the appliance. So now that this is ready for migration, I'm going to go over to a jump box that I have that has network connectivity to my environment. And I'm going to go through, click migrate, and go through the wizard. Here I'm going to go through and give it the source Windows vCenter server. So the server that the Windows vCenter server that I will be migrating, I need to provide its name here, FQDN or IP address, along with the SSO password. In the case of 6.0, one thing I want to point out is we had the option in 6.0 to use a different domain name other than vSphere.local. So if you did, this is pre-filled with administrator vSphere.local, so you will have to make sure to remember to change that to whatever domain you used. If you didn't change it, then don't worry about it. In the case of migration from 5.5, there's nothing to change. It also does warn you and says, hey, do not run this on the vCenter that you're migrating because we are shutting down. Here I have the option of deploying either to a ESXi host or a vCenter server. In the case of having a management cluster and having that management vCenter server, I can deploy to it. If this is a standalone, then highly recommend deploying directly to a host. I'm going to enter in my credentials to my VCSA because I actually have a management cluster there. And I get to select where I want to put this new appliance. I was lazy and didn't create any folders, so it's my lab. No one cares, right? Select where I'm going to be deploying it to. And then I'm going to now talk about the target appliance name. So this is going to be the new appliance. Again, here you'll give it a new name. If I wanted to keep the existing name, I would have had to go out and rename my existing Windows vCenter server first. As far as the display name only, the operating system name is kept regardless. So even if your display name could be one thing, your OS name could be something else, but you'll ping by whatever your FQDN is. So keep that in mind. There's some customers that have different naming schemes between Windows and the appliance, so that may affect you. And again, here I can select to increase my deployment size. I was tiny, so I can go all the way up to extra large, which is new in 6.5. And I can also increase the sizes allocated to stats, events, alerts, and tasks. If I wanted to do so right then and there, I can also do those later. Then I will select a data store to deploy to. And once I've done that, the next thing is I need to give this a temporary IP address, because just like a manual process where I need to deploy these side by side, the only way we can do that is we have to provide it a temporary IP address that will later be overwritten with the existing IP address once we shut down the Windows vCenter server. So again, just keep this temporary IP address handy, especially if you're doing multiple migrations. You can use the same one, I guess, if it's within the same VLAN, subnet, things like that. Once this is done, I'm going to go through and review, make sure that all the information I put in there is correct. And then I'm going to hit finish and start the migration process. I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit. So here we're going to start the migration process. It's going to go out, it's going to deploy the OVF first and get that ready. Because again, in 6.5 we have a two-stage deployment model where stage 1 deploys OVF, stage 2 does the configuration. So we've successfully deployed a vCenter server with embedded platform services controller. Now we're going to go through and make sure that we get it configured.
Hey, Emad, can
Sure.
you comment real quickly? There was a question that came in about changing the FQDN. Can you briefly kind of talk about the FQDN of vCenter and how it plays in with the PNID?
Yeah, so PNID is it's just a term that we use internally, but it's the FQDN, right? If you deploy a vCenter server, whether it's appliance or Windows, with a FQDN, it's tied to that vCenter. Now, you can change the IP address of that vCenter server if you deploy it in that manner. But if you deploy it with an IP address for the FQDN, that IP address is not only the FQDN, but also the IP address of vCenter server. So you cannot even change the IP address because it will cause a lot of havoc and you will have a miserable time. Even if you deploy with an FQDN, all you can do is change the IP address. You cannot change the FQDN of vCenter. It's currently not a supported thing we have right now. Maybe sometime in the future we may have something for that, but as of right now, the only thing you can do is change the IP address if you've deployed an FQDN. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Any more questions?
I think this is a follow-up. So build a new VC and drag and drop between them. Graham, are you talking about kind of that Twitter conversation we were having earlier? Oh, I see. To change the FQDN. So basically what he's asking is if he needs to change the FQDN of vCenter, can he just deploy a new vCenter and then cross vCenter vMotion the workloads to that other vCenter?
I mean, I guess if it's within the same SSO domain and all that, I'm sure it's maybe possible, but that may be I mean, there's some manual migration steps in there. So you definitely want to do your homework prior. It's something I haven't done, so I'd have to test it out to see if everything would come over correctly. So recommend doing it in the lab first. Unless you have any input on it. I haven't done it, so.
No, I mean, that seems like drastic measures to change an FQDN, but I mean, if the policy is that the machine name needs to be, follow a set and sort of guidelines and you have no choice, then yeah, that would be one way to do it, just deploy another vCenter. But the thing is it may not be, do you have extra host capacity? Because you're going to have to migrate hosts over to that new vCenter before you can migrate workloads over. So like you were saying, Emad, I think there's some considerations and some things you got to think through. But technically speaking, you could do it that way.
Within the same SSO domain. That's typically your limiting factor. So make sure you're within the same SSO domain. And that's why I said before you even start a migration, if I have customers that say this is a great tool, I want to get there, but we have to keep our naming standard. So for them, they either hold off or they basically do the manual type of migration to get to the appliance. But we have a lot of customers that are like, hey, it's not a showstopper. We'll get there. They love the fact that because we retain the identity of the vCenter server, that it's one less thing that they have to worry about when it comes to other products and vCenter, because again, they know that it's the same old vCenter server.
Cool. One last question that is waiting in the queue from Blake. So can you, he's asking, what if, the example you show in the video that vCenter is running inside a management cluster. What if you were going to upgrade that and migrate that vCenter that is actually running the management cluster? Basically a self-managed vCenter.
So it depends on the scenario. So in that scenario, what I would do for the management cluster vCenter is I would point it to the host, right, as the target. First, go through that migration process, which I actually did, and then this vCenter, I pointed it to the management vCenter. I could have easily pointed this vCenter to a host as well. So I would say that when in doubt, point it to a host. But in a scenario where you have a management cluster, you do the management vCenter first, point it to a host as the target, and then any other vCenters, you can either point them to the management vCenter server if you want, or a host.
Okay, one more question, if you will.
Sure.
That came in. So if my appliance loses power, what happens to the VM? Do they continue running somewhere?
So it's nothing's changed from before. If vCenter is down, you've lost visibility to your workloads. You just can't make any changes. Now you just have to bring up vCenter, but everything is running still on your hosts as they would. You just lost your management plane, so now you need to bring that back up.
I might be reading into this a little bit, so Alex, forgive me if this isn't what you meant. But just to clarify, when we're talking about the vCenter Server Appliance, the appliance is a virtual machine. It's not a physical hardware-based appliance. So I don't know if that's what you meant when you say loses power, but just want to make that clarification.
Yeah. The appliance is a virtual machine. We are not in the hardware business. Any more questions?
Nope, we're good for now.
Okie dokie. All right, so we are going to go through. Now we're in stage 2. We're doing pre-migration checks again, just to validate everything is kosher, and then we're going to jump in. Fast forward this a little bit. It's going to come back and it's going to talk about, again, it's kind of like the last attempt to say, hey, here's another warning. And keep in mind, when you have warnings, it's not going to stop you from migrating, right? Just make sure that the warnings, you're aware of them. In this case, it was just talking about Update Manager and some files that won't be copied, older files that won't be copied over. And so to me, that wasn't, I don't need those files anyway, not a big deal. But make sure you pay attention to those warning messages, because there could be something in there. Even though it's just a warning, it could be impactful. So definitely pay attention to those messages. One thing I wanted to point out is, as you go through the migration, you have 2 boxes, right? You have the migration assistant that was kicked off on your Windows vCenter server or platform service controller, depending on your deployment model. From time to time, peek in and take a look at the migration assistant, because it actually kind of does a quasi like running log of what's going on down at the bottom, and this will continue until the migration data is copied over, and then it's going to shut down the source Windows vCenter server. So up to that point, you can actually see what's going on, even though within the UI, you'll see some things like, hey, deploying, copying data, blah, blah, blah. But here's another way to kind of see where you're at and what's going on. Here I'm going to go ahead and provide my AD credentials. There is a KB out there that provides you what rights are required. Make sure you have those rights. Somebody with rights to basically change objects. So make sure that you have those that individual credentials to do so. Again, here we can select if we want to bring over our inventory or performance data. If not, we just leave the configuration and migrate that over. Again, we'll just review and make sure that everything is in place and correct. We'll hit finish, and we will actually start the configuration of the Windows vCenter. Here it's telling us that, hey, the source Windows vCenter is going to be shut down, so keep that in mind. Stage 2 is when we start the data transfer process. We'll copy the data over, we'll set it up, we'll start the services. Oh, we're about 5 minutes over. I don't know if you want a time crunch, Adam.
No, I'm good, man.
Okay. Once the migration is complete, of course, for 6.5, I have to emphasize this, and Adam is the champion of this. You do not have a C# client to rely on. You will you'll go into the web client, or you have the option of the HTML5 client. With the HTML5 client, just keep in mind that not all the features are there. It's not 100% feature parity yet, but the web client in 6.5 is it is 100 times better than what it was. It is now the source of truth because we have live refresh, so no issues there. You'll log in. One thing you'll notice is, and I did this on purpose, is the vCenter name, I put Win in front. So as you can see there in my inventory, it brought over the personality. It brought in the FQDN of my vCenter server, but I'm now using an appliance instead of Windows. It brought over my entire inventory. I didn't have to do anything to bring that vCenter over. There was no manual intervention, no heavy lifting. It was all done by the appliance, the migration tool. One thing I want to say before we call it quits is I showed you the GUI way of doing this, but there's also a automated way to do this. We do have templates not only for deployment and upgrade, but we also have migration templates as well. So you can actually go through and script your migration using the JSONs as well, especially if you have several vCenter servers that you want to do. I'd recommend going through this process at least once through the GUI. That way you have a good understanding of what's being asked of you and understanding the process. Once that's done, you can automate this and not have to really be in front. If it's VMs, we will automate copying the migration assistant to the PSC or a vCenter server. If you have a physical Windows box, yes, I know there's still some of you guys out there. Please come and see me. We need to talk. But if you do have a physical Windows vCenter server, you will have to manually copy over the migration assistant because we leverage VM tools to be able to automate that. And since we're not running VM tools on a physical box, you'll have to manually do that. But we do support not only the migration of virtual vCenters, but we will migrate over a physical Windows vCenter as well. Same rules apply in regards to the migration process and same versioning and whatnot. It's just you'll have to manually copy over the migration assistant. With that, that's all I got for tonight. We can probably talk vCenter all day. If there's questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah, actually, there is a question in the queue, Emad, if you
Sure.
wouldn't mind. If you run the migration through the GUI, is there a way to save out an answer file with the settings you used?
Yeah, unfortunately, that feature is not there today, and that's why I kind of, to be honest, after I've gone through the migration once, I make sure I use the JSON, so that way I not only is it a way to templatize it for migrations, but also for deployments and upgrades, but it kind of is a way to keep track of how it was deployed, kind of a log per se of your configuration. But as of right now, there's no way to export the config.
Cool. I think that's it for questions anyway, unless we want to give people a couple more minutes.
Sure, man. I got nothing going on.
I guess kind of along the same lines, I'll just make a comment on the whole JSON thing. I probably didn't spend enough time on it last week, but it's an important topic, and I encourage everyone to take a look at the documentation and the JSON templates. But it's nice that the same tool, the VCSA-deploy command line tool, covers both or all of upgrade, new deployment, and migration. And then we give you separate JSON templates for each type of operation and what kind of deployment you're working with. So there's a lot of information out there, and it's a pretty useful way to run these migrations or upgrades or deployments.
If you guys don't mind looking at a Mac, so if you come in here and let me just let me close this out a little bit. Hopefully you can see this. But if you take a look here, under templates, you'll see that we have install, migrate, and upgrade. If you expand these out, you'll see, like, for example, install will have something for whether you're embedded and deploying to a ESXi host or VC, the PSC first instance. Make sure you kind of pay attention to that, right? Because you have PSC first instance, and anything after the first instance is considered a replication partner, so you'll use the replication. And then VCSA on host or VC, which is the external deployment. Those are the install, the regular deploy. Now if we go into migration, you have twofold. You have the Windows VC 5.5 or the Windows VC 6.0. And again, you kind of have a subset of templates that you can use to start. And then we also have the same thing for upgrade, where you can use these JSON templates to automate the upgrade of your VCSA from version 5.5 or 6.0 to 6.5. Maybe that's something we probably should maybe do a session on, is how to use the JSON files. We get a lot of questions on those. What do you guys think? Would that be helpful if we did a session on how to use the JSON files? And if so, if it's beneficial, what would you like to see? Install, migrate, upgrade, quasi of each?
Lots of yeses. So I'd say probably just, soup to nuts, do them all.
All right.
Vote for fresh install, vote for migrate and upgrade. I think it's worth
All right.
doing all of them.
We'll get something scheduled, and I'll get something on the books, and we'll get you guys taken care of for that. And I'll write a few blog posts and things like that to help you along the way. Maybe even put the sample ones that I used today, because to be honest, I, internally we help test with the UI, but after the fact, I always deploy using the JSON, because I have a template. I just go in and change the IP name from deploying to a VC or host. A few things I modify. Otherwise, I just let that thing run, go off, do whatever I need to do, come back, and I have a PSC or VC deployed. How are we looking on questions or comments? If anybody wants to, get unmuted or whatever, it's.
Yeah, we can open up the lines. While I'm trying to figure out how to do that, Dan just made a comment about wanting to see a workflow for a deployment and a restore, or I guess just how to restore using the native backup.
If you got a second and hold on, let me 1 second. I may have a video if that's acceptable. Unless they want it.
I think that'll be okay. So let's see. All right, I'm going to start unmuting people while Emad is looking that up, and you guys can ask questions live on the line.
Did you know that the Earth has lost more than half of its wildlife in the last 40 years? Oh, that's a lot. I like to lose. How about while that's cooking, you and I 15 minutes to hop on a plane parent, put this phone bank and making some money? Because we're women, sweetie. People hate us.
Sounds like I may have unmuted one too many people.
15 minutes? We're also talking about exercise. Untreated rectovaginal fistulas.
Anybody have any questions for Emad? You should be unmuted. Oh, did I mute? I muted Emad, apparently.
Start calling you Josh now.
Oh, man. All right, Emad, you should be live. Apologies. I just at-welled you.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Man, if you didn't want to talk to me, you didn't have to mute me. All right, so I did find a video. Let me share said video. Okay, can you see? Oh,
Yeah, that looks fine.
let me get this into. Well, I can't even. Why can't I? Can you see the whole thing, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we're going to mount the ISO here. And what I'm going to do is, and this is the restore, I'm going to click restore. And again, nothing changes from a deployment perspective. Stage 1, deploy OVF. Stage 2, configuration. Now, I'm just going to pause here for a second. Here, I basically provide the protocol that I used, or the target location as well. So in this case, I'm going to be using FTPS, and I'm going to provide my location. I'm going to give it the FTPS username and password, and because I used the option to encrypt, I need to provide it the password. And once that's done, I go into a summary. It's going to go through, oh, I found the backup. Here's the restore details. So it found my backup. It sees that my deployment type was a vCenter that was embedded. Again, it's a small deployment. Here's the configuration. And I should be now ready to restore. I'm going to now tell it where I want to deploy this appliance. Accept the certificate warning. Give it a name. Again, same thing here. I can either keep the same size, but I can't go smaller. I can only go same size or larger, but I cannot shrink. Select the data store. Now, one thing I kind of want to point out here with the restore is I'm using an FQDN, okay? With a restore, I have the option of changing the IP address of my vCenter server. Just keep in mind that if you do this, you want to update your DNS in doing so. I'm using the same IP address, but in a restore scenario, you'll see that it preserves the identity. So system name, UUID, all kept in place, so that new restored vCenter, again, as if it never went away. Oops. Let me go back here. Okay. So review, it's going to go through and start to initialize and deploy an appliance. Look at that ludicrous speed deployment. We're going to jump into stage 2. By the way, if you decide here, you'll notice that if I decide here to hit close, I can come back later on, and through the VMware, I can continue the configuration. So stage 2. So for example, like right now, I'm still in the office. I could deploy this OVA, get to stage 1, hit close. When I get home, I can go to the VMware via FQDN or IP address using port 5480 and start the configuration process. So it doesn't have to be done right then and there, but it's probably better to get it over with. But if you don't have the time or the luxury, like I said, you can always choose to continue it later.
Is there a scripting JSON option for the restore like there is for install and migrate?
Currently, there's no restore JSON. There's some things you have to do to get it to automate. In the process of working through that, I'll be sharing that once I have it all complete. But as of right now, no, there's nothing as far as JSONs. We're going to get to stage 2. I'm just kind of going through the video real quick. Again, it's just doing the taking a configuration file, doing the restore, restarting services, and now once everything is said and done, I just log back into my client. And everything is there as it was before. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, we got no other questions in the queue right now, so I think we'll wrap things. Emad, any parting words?
Migrate to the VCSA. You should. I'm not going to do the other voice.
You got to do the voice.
I'm not going to do the voice. If you want to hear the voice, you need to go listen to the Virtually Speaking podcast that I did with Pete Fletcher and John Nicholson. It's pretty funny. Nichols. Sorry. He can't deploy VCSA anyway, so I'll butcher his name a little bit.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for the session. Emad, awesome job. And then next week, I think we're scheduled for HA and DRS with Matt Meyer, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.